I want to talk to you about Israel's crimes, and there's a pretty scary statement that was tweeted out by Israel's so-called defense minister, Israel Katz. He wrote, "This is the last opportunity for Gaza residents who wish to do so to move south and leave Hamas terrorists isolated in Gaza City itself, facing the IDF's ongoing operations at full force. Those who remain in Gaza will be considered terrorists and terror supporters. The IDF is prepared for all possibilities and is determined to continue its operations." So this is pretty ominous. What is your response to this statement?
They're openly saying that they're just going to kill everybody. And Katie, it's important to back up. There are hundreds of thousands of people living in Gaza City. Gaza City is in fact, it is the largest Palestinian city. And there's a number of hospitals there. And with it being the largest Palestinian city, again, you can imagine the landscape. There are they're old people, there are young people, there are people who are ill, who are in hospital. There are people who are disabled. There's just a whole range of society. And what he's saying is, if you remain, you are a fair target. Again, it's like flipping this idea of international law on its head. But they've done it now for the past 2 years. So it's like, we're just going to label anybody Hamas. And we've been warning against this now for the past 2 years. We've been saying that in the way that Israel has been operating, anybody in Gaza equals Hamas. They've said this. They've warned against this. We've been tracking their statements. That's why it's genocide. And we've been gaslit throughout this entire period. And now they're coming out very clearly and saying, if you remain in Gaza City, we're going to treat you as Hamas, and therefore we are going to get rid of you. This is what I don't think they've made it any clearer than that.
Again, I know that you're saying not to lose hope, but what can be done in the face of this impunity and in the face of this? I mean, it's not even appropriate to call it asymmetry, because that makes it sound like it's kind of a war. And we know that this is genocide, but they're just saying this out loud. And as many human rights lawyers and UN officials have pointed out, Israel's doing the work that's often required, that often needs to be done by investigative bodies that have to go through the archives and look for statements of intent of genocide, right? And they're just saying this part out loud. So what can be done?
We have to keep going. We have to keep going, Kate. We don't have the luxury of giving up hope. We just don't have that luxury. We just don't have that luxury.
And what do you think strategically the focus of supporters? Okay, disrupt, like how?
Disrupt, just keep disrupting in the ways that I think that has been disrupted now for some, at least in Europe. And making it noisy and making it loud, because without that, I don't think that it's getting the attention that it needs. They're now. I think politicians are now starting to clue in. We saw the big walkout at the United Nations, where 50 countries walked out of Netanyahu's speech. We've never seen that before. Over 100 diplomats. We're seeing that Colombia today kicked out the Israeli ambassador, and I hope that there's going to be much more of that. But it just needs to be more. Israel can't be treated as normal any longer. And I want to go back to this plan that Trump has laid out, if I may. And the reason I want to go back to it is because one of the things that Netanyahu has tried to do, and I think he's actually done successfully, is that he's flipped everything on its head. Right? So he's now made it that, one, Palestinians have to negotiate an end to their genocide, which doesn't make any sense. And number two, that if somehow Hamas does not agree, then they're to blame for their own genocide. And so again, we have to keep putting the pressure on the actual actor who's perpetrating, who's carrying out this genocide, and keep the focus on that rather than on on the flip side of like, is Hamas accepting? Is Hamas not accepting? Because that's his whole point. His whole point was to flip the script. His whole point was, I'm going to go to the United States. I'm going to make this a situation which it's all about Hamas, and Hamas has to accept or not accept. And in so doing, you saw very quickly that countries that were beginning to say something, or bodies that were beginning to do something, they've suddenly had this ability to slip out. It suddenly gave them the ability to like sneak out. So whether it's UEFA or all these countries that came forward and said, yes, we support this plan, because they are looking for a way to evade their responsibilities and not put pressure on Netanyahu. So our role is to continue to keep that pressure up, keep that pressure on Israel, and not just not flip the script to focus on Hamas and blame Palestinians for the genocide.
Let's talk about the occupied West Bank. Trump recently made a big show out of claiming that he's not going to let Israel annex the West Bank, which has been a topic of increased discussion. You have ministers in Netanyahu's cabinet openly demanding that he do so. And Trump said, I'm not going to let it happen. This has to stop. And, I detected in Trump maybe some awareness that even members of his own base are aghast at how much he serves Israel. His whole thing was America first, but he's constantly putting Israel first. So this, to me, him coming out and saying this struck me as very performative, saying, I'm not going to let Israel annex the West Bank. But in real life, does it have any practical significance that Trump is saying this? And what is the reality right now, whether Israel's formally annexed the West Bank or not, about its colonization there?
It has zero significance. So what is annexation? Annexation is taking over land by force. Israel already took over the land by force. And when you look around and you go to the West Bank and you go to the settlements, there isn't like a separate law for the settlers versus the Israelis that are in Tel Aviv. It's the same law. Like if you want to open up a business inside a settlement, it's the same business law that applies in the settlement as applies in Tel Aviv. There's no separation of the law. So the law already applies to the West Bank, to the settlements. The only difference is that it doesn't apply to Palestinians and to those areas of the Palestinian Authority, which is just 18% of the West Bank. It's tiny, tiny, tiny little place in space. And that's it. And so when in even the plans that Smotrich is talking about, he's saying we're going to annex the West Bank with, get this, surprise, surprise, 82% of the West Bank. And it mirrors exactly what we see right now on the ground. Yeah. And so why am I saying that it doesn't have any impact? Because they've already done it. There already are so many settlements around. It's gone wild over the course of the past couple of years. The Israelis have built more and more settlements. There are places now in the West Bank that are quite literally, Aaron, caged in. Sinjar is one of them. The settlers have been attacking Palestinians all the time. Since October of 2023, 1,047 Palestinians have been killed. 22 communities have been wiped off the map. So all of that has already happened. It doesn't need to have a formal declaration of sovereignty. The reason that the Israelis want the formal declaration of sovereignty is they want that nail in the coffin to say, that's it. Like they want to be able to say victory, that complete victory. But they already have everything that they want. And the only thing that they don't have is that the Palestinian Authority is still around and that there are Palestinians who are still around.